The Catholic Church has exerted power over the world for many centuries. In this day, very few would have any success in going against it, but there was one religious leader who stood up against the powers that be back in the 12th century. This man was Arnold of Brescia. He was an Italian who rose within the ranks of his local monastery. At the time, the church was corrupted in various ways. It was allowing for people to pay for forgiveness to fund money into the pockets of the higher orders. It also changed its law of succession from the people voting in priest to the church itself voting from within. Arnold began preaching what was called apostolic poverty. This was the belief that the church should practice poverty and should not own property from the money they received. In other words, the church leaders should not be employed by the church, but rather live humbly and use their powers to help the people. This was a part of a growing movement in northern Italy which helped fuel Arnold's thinking. The members of this movement were known as the Patarini. The Patarini had their own history with leaders who were martyred. Being a respectful head of the monastery in Brescia, Arnold was quickly censored and kicked out of his hometown. Arnold left for Paris. There he joined forces with other well-known rebels and continued spreading his message. He and his colleagues were vehemently despised by Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. Saint Bernard was the head of the church in France. Interestingly, Saint Bernard was the co-founder of the Knights Templars. A man with his own mystique and contributions to the church, he had a reputation to uphold within the upper echelons and couldn't condone the underground revolts being headed by Arnold. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux was also a reformist at heart and did oppose church corruption throughout his career. However, the difference between Bernard and Arnold was that Arnold was a man of the people. Arnold's revolt was led from the outside, whereas Bernard's change was created from within. Arnold and his close friend, Abelard, another famous reformer in church history, were prosecuted by Bernard in what is known as the Synod of Sens in 1141. Abelard retracted his rebellion, whereas Arnold refused. Arnold was excommunicated and left to preach in Germany. 2 years later, he returned to Italy, where he was forgiven by Pope Eugene III. He was told to go to Rome and submit under the church for a final absolution. When he arrived in Rome, there was a revolution taking place against the church. Arnold fell back into his spirit and took charge of the revolution. He ended up running Pope Eugene III out of Rome in 1147 and became the master of the city for the next 10 years. The revolution started by the Roman people had as its goal to do away with the church, its corruption, and to dethrone the emperor. They sought to reinstate a people's republic in Rome. Eventually, both the Pope and Emperor joined forces in 1155 and drove back the revolution. They quickly captured Arnold of Brescia and tried him of heresy. They hung him and burned his body at the stake. They scattered his ashes in the Tiber River. Some sources say that they cremated him in hopes that the people wouldn't glorify his body and raise him up as a savior. Arnold of Brescia was of a dying breed, one of the last to stand up to the church and authorities for what was right.